11 plus mind-blowing lessons from the book Men in Love. Number 1. Men are trained to find their security in themselves. Women are their emotional outlet, their main source of love. If, as women believe, men are so lucky, so self-sufficient, so free, dominant, and irresponsible, living in an option-filled man's world, why do they give it all up for marriage? Men may resist, but in the end, most do marry because they want women more than anything else. If responsibilities, mortgages, ulcers, childcare, and monogamy are part of the package they must buy to get women, they'll do it. In fact, my research tells me that men's love of women is often greater than their love of self. They worship women's beauty to the unhealthy exclusion of their own narcissistic needs. They discredit the male body as aesthetically displeasing, only to be labeled bestial when they adore women's bodies too openly and too enthusiastically. For women's sake, men give up closeness with their own sex, learn to accept female rules and controls. In marriage, they take up the lifelong burden of economic support, often leading to an earlier death. They give their place in the lifeboat to their wife. Number 2. If the cliché were true that men are only out for one thing, the fact is that masturbation or a homosexual encounter is sex too. So is sex with an animal or a whore, and this usually accompanied by no tears, no limits, no oaths of lifelong fidelity, no strings at all. But the majority of men still dream of sex with a loving woman. Men love women at any price, love women even though, beginning in childhood, it is the female sex which makes the male feel guilty about what he desires most from them. We will see that one of the reasons men choose the masochistic role is that feeling they are wrong to want sex from women, they accept pain as the symbolic price they must pay. Humiliation is a kind of payment in advance for forbidden pleasures. Men are more prone than women to acting out sexual daydreams, precisely because they often begin so close to reality. What if that blonde across the room came over to my table, and she did this, and I do that? Then we're joined by that brunette waitress, and she does this incredible new thing. Often no scenario is needed at all. Just the sight of a naked woman, a photo in a magazine, might be stimulation enough. Hard reality, linked with the fastest route to orgasm, is what male masturbatory fantasy is all about. The last thing most men need once they are in bed with a woman is a fantasy to spur them on to greater heights. On the contrary, rather than dream up erotic images, men tend to focus on bringing their partners to their level. To keep from reaching their own climax too soon, they may even do arithmetical sums in their minds. Nature is wicked to women. Once the man ejaculates, the species has been served. Nature, often called Mother Nature, doesn't care if women come or not. Reproduction can take place either way. Feminine fantasies tend to follow the same curve as female physiology. A slow build-up, a high plateau, and a slow decline. Women's training adds reinforcement to her biology. Raised on a catalog of inhibitions, she needs sexual fantasy to give her permission to get past her lifelong habit of saying no to sex. Number 3. A fantasy is a map of desire, mastery, escape, and obscuration. The navigational path we invent to steer ourselves between the reefs and shoals of anxiety, guilt, and inhibition. It is a work of consciousness, but in reaction to unconscious pressures. What is fascinating is not only how bizarre fantasies are, but how comprehensible. Each one gives us a coherent and consistent picture of the personality, the unconscious of the person who invented it, even though he may think it the random whim of the moment. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, you probably will not see us again. If you have, congratulations, you are growing every day. Number 4. Women want men, men want women. Our dreams of one another, fantasies, not only express our most direct desires, but also portray the obstacles that must be symbolically overcome to win sexual pleasure. Fantasy is as close as we will ever come again to the omnipotent joys we once knew as infants. In a moment of rage, we say, "I'd like to kill you." This is a fleeting fantasy, a satisfying violent image which expresses the overheated mood of the moment. But how likely are we to pull a gun and do it? It is important to recognize that not all fantasies are frustrated wishes. This is one of the most common misconceptions about fantasy. Number 5. All my life I've been haunted by a little girl's voice within that said women needed men, I needed men, more than they needed us. Men could always go off to Singapore or drink alone in bars, but women ceased to exist in their own eyes when men were gone. I watch the ease with which some women today decide to build a life without men, who never lived up to their expectations anyway, in favor of pursuing newly won autonomy. I can understand the sense of freedom born of ridding oneself of the childish and ultimately false security that comes from binding oneself to a man, but I do not believe men could ever abandon women so swiftly. In fact, this book has persuaded me that men want women more than the other way around. Towards satisfying their love, need, desire, lust, men will give up more than women will. Number 6. Women call themselves the loving sex. We are always waiting for men, always dreaming of them. We need them to put to rest the gnawing anxiety that comes from never being taught a sense of independent worth or self. Is this love or is it dependency? When men do offer love, why is it so often felt to be lacking? Hold me tighter, never let me go, women beg, unable to find in any man's arms the kind of iron security that dependent, passive people need. The point I want to make is this: is it the man she really wants, or is it the relief from anxiety which he symbolized? When women can get their emotional needs satisfied elsewhere, don't they often forget about men? Take the familiar picture of a woman who has found such close togetherness with her children that father feels left out. How many men do you know who neglect their wives for their children? Number 7. Today, women are learning that nobody gives you an orgasm, nobody makes you sexual, except yourself. This re-evaluation of the feminine position has led to a consequent reassessment of the masculine. While men begin by loving women, this supposed smooth path of development ignores an important and inherent conflict. The male lifelong love affair with women leaves him with desire for someone who stands for such ambivalence, who represents such contradictions of flesh versus spirit, that we begin to understand those early church fathers who based all their theology on notions of the tempting wickedness of women. Number 8. Is it any wonder that many women, even in these feminist times, continue to say they feel more comfortable around men? Women, they say, are too petty, too critical, too competitive and bitchy. In any generalization so sweeping, it isn't difficult to see not reality, but the shadow of the rule-making mother of childhood. Both boys and girls, of course, are told in words, body language, and above all, perhaps by silence, that sex is bad. Mother doesn't approve. The little girl wants to be like mother. That is how women are. She tamps down her sexual desires and tries to be a lady. Her sexuality remains in conflict with her introjected mother, her all-important niceness, all her life long. That is the subject of another book. What we are concerned with here is the little boy. He doesn't want to be like mother. His body, his anatomy, tells him he is different. He knows mother finds one side of him acceptable, the good boy. The other side is bad, dirty, sexual, willful. This aspect must be hidden, but it is stronger, constantly threatening to overwhelm him. He wants mother to love him. He swears to himself he will never masturbate again. If mother found out, she would abandon him in a rage, but the difference between the boy and his sister is that while both have taken in mother's anti-sexual message, the boy wants to accentuate his difference by breaking the rules. He dares to do it anyway. He stands self-convicted, a dirty animal, reveling in his sexuality, angry and forlorn in the knowledge that it is unacceptable to women. The predicament is agonizing. The boy wants sex but feels he is wrong to want it. Women have placed his body at war with his soul. Only when he gets out of the house, only when he discovers that other little boys are just like himself, does he get enough reinforcement to bear being bad, to experiment with breaking mother's rules, to begin to define himself as separate from her, an individual, a man. This is how he's going to be, just like the guys, not like silly women and their eternal fussing about don't do this, don't do that. Mother's okay, but after all, she's a woman. What does she know? Number 9. Being accused of liking girls, of wanting all that lovey-dovey stuff, is to be accused of not being a man. The boy at boarding school cries every night because he is homesick for mother. When she comes to visit him, he pushes away her kisses. "Don't mind your little friends," she says. "They wish their mothers were here to kiss them." It's true, but the boy can't risk his newly emerging masculine identity for a caress. He would rather have the approval of the other guys who are watching than his mother's. That feeling of male sexual solidarity is one women have always envied. Number 10. Dividing women into the kind you fuck versus the kind you marry is indeed one of the manifestations of male ambivalence, but only one. The masculine conflict is protean. Like the Greek god who gave us the word, the war of love against rage can take as many shapes as there are fantasies in this book. Mother used to tenderly tuck you into bed at night, reproving you gently for trying to put your hand on her nightgowned breast. Then she blandly went off to share a bed with dad. Oedipal lover, Oedipal furies. Women are wonderful, but they drive you nuts too. The same man who loves women for their maternal sweetness and warmth will invent scenarios in which feminine hypocrisy is sexually degraded down to the man's own bestial level. Certain phrases sum up a truth so immediate and universal that even the dullest person responds, "Yes, that's right." One such phrase has become so overworked that even pop song writers hesitate to use it anymore. "You always hurt the one you love." It is another way to express the masculine conflict. Love versus rage. Perhaps most revealing about this cliché for purposes of this book is this: I have never heard a woman use it. It is here that we have reached the heart of fantasy's enchantment. No matter what men may do to with their imaginary lovers, her reactions are just the opposite of mother's. She loves him for it. "Yes," she shouts. "More?" A fantasy woman does not reproach her man for letting other men peep at her, for wanting to share her with another guy, for dreaming of her having sex with a dildo or a dog. Number 11. There seems to be a need in us not only to recreate, during sex, our earliest memories of physical touch, warmth, and communion, but also to extract revenge for all the pains and frustrations suffered during infancy too. It may be dismaying, but it is often true that for some people, the white-hot pitch of obsessive desire that may be the peak experience sex has to offer is reached when hostility is fused with love. Number 12. Is the male role so enviable? Men will be slower to recognize this than women. While many men have begun to question the value of their traditional power, it is not easy to give up roles and positions society has trained you to see as superior. My own belief is that the greatest help men will get in ridding themselves of their father's meretricious attitudes will come from women. We live in a time now when many women are working past their own rage, growing beyond the easy stance of seeing men as the enemy. Women who care about men will see in these pages not reflections of their own needs and fears, but people like themselves, struggling for sexual gratification and love. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, you probably will not see us again. If you have, congratulations, you are growing every day.